Welcome back to the deep dive. Our whole goal here, as you know, is to take a stack of sources, sometimes really challenging ones, and just strip away all the noise. We want to hand you the crucial knowledge you need to be informed, and to do it, quickly and thoroughly. And today, we are really not navigating the calm waters of policy papers. Not at all. We are diving into something far more volatile. It's a highly charged, raw, and I would say intensely skeptical manifesto of total societal failure.
I think that's a really important distinction to make right from the top.
Right.
The source material we're about to dissect, it's not a report, it's not a study.
Far from it.
It's more of a profound philosophical polemic. It presents this really uncompromising view of human weakness and systemic deceit. And it does it with a shocking amount of intellectual intensity and, frankly, cynicism.
Okay, so let's set our mission for this deep dive because it's critical. We need to impartially guide you, the listener, through this text's central and very interconnected arguments. We're going to explore what the author means by systemic corruption, map out what they call the signal, and then really analyze the specific historical and political judgments they lay out. This is intellectually taxing stuff, but we're here to map out that aggressive internal logic for you.
And we can, I think, identify the core thesis almost immediately. The author uses it as an axiom for the entire critique. The text centers on this idea that an inescapable vicious circle exists.
Vicious.
Exactly. And this circle is defined by a very clear trajectory. Universal desire leads to corruption. That corruption then inevitably, and I mean inevitably in this author's view, leads to irreversible societal decay. So our goal today is to map that cycle. We're calling it the corruption axiom for this discussion.
And that brings us right to the ultimate tension that I think the author wants you, the listener, to feel. It's this conflict between knowing, right, intellectually knowing that the system around us is fundamentally corrupt.
Yes.
And then that frustrating, maybe even fatal inability to stop yourself from participating in it. It's a critique that doesn't just, judge the political class or the elites.
No, not at all.
It implicates everyone. It implicates the reader, you, in the system's downfall.
And that's such a crucial point for context here. The author isn't interested in, say, incremental reform.
No policy solutions here.
Not at all. They're not looking for solutions. They are basically stating that the entire architecture of human striving, the mechanism itself, is inherently broken. So if you accept that starting premise, that axiom we talked about, then the end conclusion of decay is simply unavoidable. It's already baked in.
All right, let's get into that axiom, the vicious circle. We should start right where the source material does, with a statement that is just so explicit, so cynical, it's almost mathematical. Here's the core quote that really defines this entire critique. It says, "Money and fame corrupts, and everybody crave for money and fame." So what is the point here?
I mean, what's so fascinating about that is how it's structured. It's like a syllogism where the conclusion is just pure nihilism about human effort.
A syllogism, right? Lay that out for us.
Okay, so the author establishes two premises that they present as unchallengeable. Premise one, the principle of corruption. The pursuit of status, which is defined as money and fame, is toxic. It corrupts.
A given.
A given. Premise two, the principle of universality. The craving for that status is inherent. It's inescapable. It's part of the human condition. Everybody craves it.
And when you put those two premises together,
you get the devastating rhetorical question. So what is the point here? If corruption is the guaranteed, predetermined outcome of a universal desire, then the author concludes that any effort, any striving for virtue or for change is ultimately meaningless.
Because the result is already set.
The result, societal decay, is predetermined. It frames this whole pursuit of status not as a series of choices people make, but as a universal fatal flaw that's hardwired into our society.
That perfectly describes what we're calling the inescapable trap. It suggests that the second you enter the arena of public engagement, whether that's politics or starting a business or even trying to gain influence in a social movement, you're already on a doomed trajectory.
Yes. And we see this play out constantly, don't we? Especially in the modern digital age. The internet, social media, it amplifies status seeking beyond anything previous generations could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where we need to integrate the specifics of the critique. The author is absolutely focused on the mechanisms of modern status acquisition.
Like social media.
Precisely. Think about how social media platforms function. They are systems perfectly optimized for the pursuit of fame and money. You see people start out with what seem to be genuinely high ideals. They engage in what you might call virtue signaling on really complex social issues. They build an audience, a following, based on this perceived moral purity or a deep commitment to a cause.
And that's where the vicious circle kicks in with a vengeance. That fame, that audience, it leads to monetization. It leads to sponsorships, book deals, speaking fees, real, tangible money.
Right.
And the focus then subtly, and I think this is the key, often unconsciously, shifts.
Right.
It moves from the original cause, the principle,
Right.
to just maintaining the fame and the wealth that was gained through that cause.
The initial purity is eroded. It's worn down by the constant necessity of feeding the fame machine. So if we connect this back to the author's premise, the implication is that the very tools we use to organize our discourse today, these digital platforms, capital structures, the idea of the influencer or celebrity, they are themselves toxic vectors.
They're part of the problem.
They are the machine, a machine designed specifically to take that universal human desire for status and convert it efficiently into ideological compromise and ultimately corruption.
Money corrupts, and the craving for more money corrupts more severely.
Ensuring the continuous decay of whatever ideals you started with.
And this dynamic, it directly answers that bleak question. So what is the point here?
Yeah.
I mean, if the acquisition of fame, even fame that's built on a foundation of virtue, immediately normalizes corruption, why would you even struggle?
Why bother?
Yeah, why bother?
Yeah.
The text strongly implies that any attempt to build something new or reform the old is pointless. It will always fall victim to this universal monetizable craving. It's just an exhausting, deeply fatalistic view of our social dynamics.
And the author doesn't let you off the hook. They immediately shift from this general bleak observation to a direct accusation. They use this very specific short phrase, you all play into.
You all play into.
It's intensely personal. It refuses to let the listener, you, remain some kind of detached observer. Suddenly, you're an active, complicit participant in this decay.
So if we are playing into this, what is the specific game being played? It's obviously the pursuit of status, validation, material reward, but I think it's more specific. It's the game of compromise.
Yes. The game of compromise.
The rules of this game seem to dictate that moral or ideological compromise is often the fastest, or maybe even the only, path to winning at scale, to acquiring significant fame and money.
Think about that from the perspective of the learner, of you striving for success. You might start a new venture or join a political movement with what you genuinely believe are pure intentions.
Of course.
But then the pressure starts. The necessity is securing crucial funding from people who don't fully share your values, or gaining the right kind of media publicity, or expanding your audience beyond just your small needs.
Right, you have to grow the platform.
Exactly. And that pressure forces you to make compromises that align your actions, if not your stated beliefs, with the very status quo you might have intended to change. You're forced to play into the rules that are set by the system itself.
We see this so clearly in the life cycle of digital activism, don't we?
Yeah.
A person gains a huge following because their critique is sharp, it's uncompromising.
Right. That's pure.
It's pure. But to move from just being an angry critic on the sidelines to becoming a powerful voice, they often have to partner with corporate entities. They have to accept venture capital. They have to moderate their tone to maintain access to larger, more mainstream audiences.
Yes.
And suddenly the uncompromising critique that generated their initial fame becomes the first compromise they have to make to sustain that fame and money.
And because everyone universally plays into this game, the rich person, the activist, the politician, the artist, the implied trajectory is one of accelerated guaranteed decay.
It's a feedback loop.
It's the ultimate feedback loop. If every single unit in the system is focused on its own self-enrichment and status accumulation, then the entire structure, whether that's the integrity of political institutions or the purity of a cultural movement, it must necessarily deteriorate.
The author sees this as an undeniable structural failure.
Yes. And that failure is what's fueling the ongoing systemic decay they're so angry about.
It really is the ultimate self-eating snake, isn't it? The Ouroboros. The desire for money and fame feeds the corruption.
Which then
normalizes the compromised behavior across all of society, making that craving for status the default setting for success. And it becomes the only path forward.
And the author believes this circle is absolute, it's unbreakable, and it's self-perpetuating. There's no way out. And given this absolute certainty of corruption, the text then introduces this momentary, almost agonizing glimpse of resistance, but it's followed immediately by its rejection. The source states, "Stop the signal. Stop resonating with low frequencies, but you can't help yourself."
That initial call, stop the signal. I mean, it sounds so powerful. It sounds revolutionary.
It does.
But we need to deconstruct what the signal actually is in this cynical worldview. It's so much more than just background noise.
That's a great point. I think the best interpretation is that the signal is the collective transmission of this corrupted reality. It's the overwhelming, pervasive cultural messaging that constantly equates your personal worth, your success, your meaning in life with money and fame.
It's the noise of the vicious circle sustaining itself.
Exactly. It's the constant pressure to crave, to achieve, to broadcast your success, and to monetize your identity.
So to stop the signal would mean what? Tuning out entirely.
It would mean tuning out the gravitational pull of our entire status-seeking culture. It would be an act of radical societal and personal detachment that the author seems to think is impossible.
I see the signal as the modern, algorithmically optimized temptation. It's that curated reality that's pushed through our screens every second of the day. And it's designed not just to distract us, but to actively pull us into the status game by showing us what we should crave. And the language here is so intensely figurative. Stop resonating with low frequencies. Why frequencies? What does that even mean?
The choice of the word frequencies is crucial. I don't think it's an accident. It implies that the author views corruption not merely as, an ethical lapse or a bad choice,
Right.
but as an almost energetic vibrational state. It lends a sort of cosmic or even esoteric weight to moral failure. It moves it out of the realm of simple human ethics and into something more like the physics of reality itself.
Okay, so if that's the case, what exactly are these low frequencies?
In this context, low frequencies represent the base, destructive, highly self-centered societal forces that dominate the vicious circle. So we're talking about the craving for instant gratification, wealth accumulation at any cost, ideological deceit, the pursuit of superficial, fleeting fame, all of it.
And to resonate.
To resonate means to be in sync with those destructive base behaviors. The author is suggesting that those who participate in the vicious circle by chasing money and fame are fundamentally aligning their very being with these corrupting, detrimental forces.
This clarifies that ideological shift we were talking about earlier with, say, the online activist. When an individual uses virtue signaling to gain attention, they are, in effect, claiming to operate on a high-frequency principle: moral clarity, justice.
Right, they're broadcasting their virtue.
But the moment the system rewards them with fame and money, they have to start aligning their choices with maintaining that status. That means making content that performs well with the algorithm, courting sponsors they might not agree with, avoiding any controversy that could jeopardize their wealth.
And so they inevitably begin resonating with the low frequencies required by the very system they now depend on for their livelihood. But here is the devastating, fatalistic turn that just negates the entire possibility of any individual revolution. But you can't help yourself.
But you can't help yourself.
Chilling. It is. That single phrase is the ultimate statement of cynicism. It moves the problem beyond willpower, beyond choice. It suggests that the impulse to crave money and fame is so primal, so inherent to the human condition, and we'll get to this next, maybe even built into the design of the material world itself, that no amount of intellectual realization or ethical commitment can ever overcome it.
The failure is structural.
It's structural and it's existential. It's not your fault, but it's your fate.
Wow. So it transforms the problem from a simple moral failing that, you could correct with enough effort or discipline
Yes.
into an existential necessity. The author believes we are compelled both biologically and systemically to participate in our own decay. We're just ensuring the perpetual maintenance of the vicious circle.
You know the signal is bad. You know the frequencies are low. But the craving, that universal desire for status, is just stronger than your will. And that's the end of the story. So now we have to transition. We have to move from this behavioral critique, the vicious circle and the individual's failure to resist it, to the source's profound and frankly radical theological critique.
Right, because this is essential.
Right.
This is where the author moves the problem of corruption from being just a social or psychological issue
to a foundational cosmic one.
And in doing so, they offer the ultimate justification for why things are, in their words, all BS anyway. It's a logical step in their argument, really. If individual striving is doomed and our societal mechanisms are inherently toxic,
then the foundation must be flawed.
The foundation of our entire reality has to be corrupt as well. And this is where the critique really leaves sociology behind and enters the realm of radical philosophy.
That perspective leads us directly to the source's most intense, for some, probably the most shocking philosophical assertion. It says, Satan is a legit BS because the demiurge is a con job. It's all BS anyway.
Okay, we absolutely need to spend some significant time on this. Because for you, the learner, A quick dictionary definition of the demiurge is not going to cut it. This concept is the philosophical engine of the author's entire despairing worldview.
Absolutely. The demiurge is a concept that's derived primarily from Gnostic philosophy.
Gnosticism, right.
Which flourished in the early centuries AD. In most Gnostic systems, there is an ultimate, true, perfect, and basically unknowable God who exists outside of our reality in a higher plane. The demiurge, however, is a lesser being. Sometimes he's just ignorant, other times he's actively malevolent. And this lesser creator deity is the one responsible for crafting the material, physical world.
So the earth, the stars, our bodies. That's the demiurge's handiwork, not the true gods.
Precisely. And the Gnostic critique of the demiurge is that his creation is fundamentally flawed. It is not a paradise, as some religions might claim.
It's a prison.
It's a prison. Exactly. The material world, which they sometimes called Heil, is seen as inherently corrupt. It's a system designed to trap the divine spark, or spirit, that exists within human bodies.
So when the author calls the demiurge a con job, they're arguing that existence itself, the entire framework of reality, the laws of physics, the materiality we operate within, the stage upon which we chase fame and money, all of it is fundamentally deceitful. It's flawed from its very inception.
The rules of the game were rigged from the factory floor.
Wow. And that is a crucial distinction to make. This moves way beyond standard modern atheism or nihilism. It's not just saying God doesn't exist or life is meaningless.
It's a much more specific and damning claim.
It's saying the universe was created by a fraud who locked us all into a bad design. And this level of intellectual depth, whether you agree with it or not, is what justifies the extreme cynicism of the rest of the text.
And think about the logic. If the creator of the system is a con job, then all of our traditional concepts of cosmic conflict are rendered meaningless.
No.
That's why the author dismisses Satan as legit BS.
Right, because Satan is just another character in the con.
He's just a distraction. In this Gnostic-inspired framework, Satan, the traditional adversary who tempts humanity within this flawed material world, is just part of the scenery. The real problem isn't the tempter. It's the flawed reality he tempts us within. It's the demiurge's creation.
So this premise provides the ultimate justification for why we can't help ourselves and why we resonate with those low frequencies.
How could you possibly achieve spiritual or ethical purity when the very material world you inhabit is built on a foundation of fundamental deceit? The system isn't just neutral, it's designed to reward corruption.
This foundational despair, it immediately explains the author's mockery of foundational religious texts. They explicitly call out Genesis. What a mockery.
And you have to ask why Genesis specifically.
Well, because Genesis is the sacred text that meticulously details the creation of the world. It's the beginning of the system, and it repeatedly describes that creation as good.
And if you view creation as the con job orchestrated by a flawed demiurge, then of course the biblical account of creation is, logically, a mockery of the actual hidden truth. It's seen as the primary narrative that legitimizes this flawed material reality that traps us all in the vicious circle of craving.
And the text doesn't stop there. It aggressively targets the Book of Job, too.
Of course it does. The Book of Job is absolutely central to Western philosophy because it's the primary text that attempts to reconcile human suffering, chaos, and injustice with the idea of a good and all-powerful creator.
It presents suffering as a test or as part of some mysterious divine plan.
Exactly. And the author, having already asserted that existence is a con job and all BS anyway, completely rejects the Book of Job because it tries to impose meaning, justice, or purpose onto a reality that the author sees as inherently meaningless, chaotic, and fundamentally unjust in its very design.
So concepts like divine tests, ultimate justice, or some eventual reward in the afterlife.
They all become part of the ideological deceit. They're just stories intended to keep us pacified and compliant within this corrupted system.
So for you, the learner, this knowledge provides a specific, albeit, a highly cynical lens. The vicious circle isn't just a flaw in capitalism or in modern politics.
No, it's a flaw in being.
It's a flaw in being. And if reality itself is a sham, then the relentless pursuit of money and fame, those low frequencies, is just the logical, base, and desperate response to living in a fundamentally corrupted system where integrity is, for all practical purposes, impossible. So moving from the cosmic down to the institutional, the author maintains this intensely critical stance. They offer a really harsh historical and institutional critique, saying Christianity has hijacked Jesus anyway. It's Roman imperialism, third, decline.
This is a classic critique, isn't it? You find it often in radical political or philosophical texts. It's the separation of the pure, high-frequency spiritual inspiration of a leader
from the low-frequency institutional machinery that gets built around them later.
Precisely. The author is effectively separating the figure of Jesus from the organized establishment that arose centuries after his death. They frame institutional Christianity not as a continuation of his message, but as a tool of temporal power and control. It was hijacked.
So the argument is that the moment the religious message becomes institutionalized, it automatically becomes subject to the vicious circle. Is that right?
I think that's exactly right.
It requires money and fame and land and political influence and mass appeal to grow and sustain itself as an institution.
All the things of this world, the world of the demiurge.
And that inevitably leads to corruption and the lowering of its moral frequencies.
Yes, and the historical claim that Christianity is merely an extension of Roman imperialism is not just, hyperbole. It's central to the author's logic. It suggests that the organized institutional religion became a seamless extension of the very structure of empire, a power structure obsessed with control, status, territorial expansion, and wealth accumulation.
So the corruption of the church, in the author's view, isn't some tragic deviation from its original ideals.
No, it's a continuation of the imperial mindset. It makes the institution complicit in the vicious circle across millennia.
That's a powerful through line in the text. The author is linking the craving for money and fame, which corrupts the individual, directly to the craving for temporal power and control, which corrupts the institution.
It connects the spiritual critique directly back to the theme of power structures perpetuating the same corruption over and over again throughout history. And we have to isolate that specific, strange phrase. Third, decline.
Right, with the question mark.
With the question mark. Since the author doesn't provide the first two declines, we can't treat it as a historical fact we can look up, but we have to treat it as a specific claim about deep historical cycles of collapse.
If we were to, give the author the benefit of the doubt and explore what historical theories they might be referencing, you often look at classical historians who saw these grand cycles of imperial decay. People like Edward Gibbon, with his study on the decline and fall of the Roman Empire.
Where decay is driven by internal luxury, moral corruption, and political incompetence.
Exactly. All low-frequency behaviors.
That's a perfect parallel. By labeling our current era as the third decline, the author is implying that the corruption we see now, this universal craving for status, the pervasive political hypocrisy, the use of religion as an imperial tool, it isn't some unique crisis of our time.
It's just the next chapter in the same old story.
It's merely the latest inevitable stage in an ongoing, predictable pattern of imperial decay. We're just living in the tail end of a long-term pattern of collapse where power structures continually fail under the weight of the very status-seeking desires they were meant to regulate.
So it reinforces that central, crushing idea.
That the problem is systemic, it's terminal, and it's cyclical. It just keeps happening.
And the implication for you, the listener, is just so clear. The system wasn't designed to save us. In this view, it was designed to perpetually fail.
So, having established the failure of individual will with the vicious circle and the failure of cosmic design with the demiurge, we now shift to the political arena. The author focuses on a specific national hypocrisy that they use to demonstrate this systemic failure in practice.
This section connects that general theme of decay directly to a tangible democratic institution. And the author, having built this case that existence is a con job and institutions are imperialist, turns their most aggressive language toward what they see as a constitutional failure in America.
The judgment here focuses specifically and very critically on the Second Amendment. The text says, "Remember, Americans, someone wrote the Second Amendment for you and you stuck it up your arses. Shame on you."
The language is obviously severe, but the interpretation of stuck it up your arses is crucial here. It's clearly not a critique of the amendment's existence itself.
No, it's the opposite.
It's a condemnation of the failure to use it for what the author perceives as its ultimate intended purpose, as the final guardrail against systemic corruption and tyranny.
Exactly. The Second Amendment, in one major historical interpretation, is seen as the ultimate tool of vigilance. It's the defense against a government that has succumbed to the vicious circle of corruption. So in the author's scathing view, this constitutional guarantee has been rendered ineffective. It's been made impotent, or it's been corrupted by the very system it was meant to guard against.
It suggests a profound complacency.
A surrender, really. A surrender of the necessary vigilance required to keep those imperial power structures in check.
But let's connect the dots. How does this specific political failure link back to the universal vicious circle, that craving for money and fame?
I think that connection is the absolute core of the author's political critique. If you see the Second Amendment as a tool that demands radical vigilance, independence, and the willingness to risk conflict with the state,
Okay.
then the craving for status, comfort, and wealth acts as a perfect sedative.
I see.
Why would you risk challenging or disrupting the system, the government, the social order, the established institutions, when that same system provides you with unprecedented comfort, fame, economic opportunity, and stability?
So the rewards of the corrupt system effectively neutralize the instruments of resistance.
Precisely. People prioritize their integration into the low frequencies of wealth acquisition. They're focused on securing their mortgages, their high status jobs, their social media influence.
All the comforts of the system.
And that takes priority over what the author would call the high frequency of vigilance and constitutional purity. The system co-opts the tools of resistance by simply offering status rewards to those who comply with it, or at the very least, remain passive and don't cause trouble.
So the author's saying the shame lies not in the text of the amendment, but in the compromise that's driven by our own desire.
It's essentially a brutal challenge. The author is saying, you are handed the ultimate mechanism to break this cycle of imperial decay, but your desire for ease, comfort, and status led you to functionally discard it. And in doing so, you ensured the continuation of the very system you claim to despise.
The fear of losing your status is greater than your commitment to principle. That's the charge. And as the text gets to its conclusion, the author just delivers this harsh summary judgment. It wraps up all these themes: systemic corruption, failed vigilance, into a few sharp labels.
Yes, we see the declaration. Too late. Angry liars. Hypocrite.
Too late.
The initial too late just reinforces that absolute fatalism we established in Section 1. The corruption is terminal. The disease is too far gone. The opportunity to stop the signal has decisively passed, if it ever truly existed in the first place. It aligns perfectly with the inevitability of the vicious circle and the idea of a third decline.
Let's focus on that dual charge of angry liars, and I think most importantly, hypocrite. This seems to be the ultimate failure point for the author.
The hypocrisy is the inevitable result of participating in the vicious circle while you're trying to maintain some appearance of morality. People are labeled hypocrites because they loudly claim to adhere to higher ideals: justice, freedom, constitutional adherence, spiritual purity.
And they often use those claims to gain influence and fame, the virtue signaling we talked about.
Exactly. Yet simultaneously and actively, they participate in the low frequencies of the status game. They compromise those ideals the very moment they conflict with their pursuit of money or fame.
This connects directly back to that social media phenomenon we identified at the very beginning. The individual uses moral righteousness to gain fame. That's the signal.
Mm-hmm.
But once the money starts to flow, their moral integrity decays because they have to align with the system that's now paying them.
They're literally using an ideal to fuel the engine of their own corruption. And that makes the label hypocrite completely inescapable in the author's framework. The angry liars are those who, despite knowing the system is rotten, despite seeing the fundamental flaws laid out in the demiurge theory, still rail against it performatively while continuing to seek status rewards within it.
They're angry because they know they're trapped.
They're angry because they're trapped, but they are liars because they pretend their actions are pure when they are simply chasing the same low-frequency rewards as everyone else. This is the author's harsh summary judgment on our modern political and cultural landscape.
It's a really powerful critique when you put it that way. The very act of criticizing the system often becomes the fastest route to monetizing your own personal brand, which in turn proves that the critic is just another hypocrite playing into the game. We should also briefly analyze the non-textual elements here. The text concludes with this massive, chaotic string of symbols. They seem random, but they're clearly intentional.
This stream of symbols, I think it functions as a visual representation of the text's intense emotional volatility. It's the philosophical chaos made visible. It amplifies the aggressive mood of the text where traditional language just fails.
It's a raw expression of anger and disgust.
That's what it feels like.
You can almost read them as a visual summary of the whole critique. You see warnings and chaos right at the beginning. The lightning bolt, the biohazard symbol, the comet and fire, that represents the inevitable collapse.
And then there are symbols of entrapment and decay, which speak directly to the vicious circle, the trap, and the spider's web. This visually reinforces that idea that the system, the demiurge's creation, is designed to ensnare us.
And finally, that large collection of human elements and hand gestures is particularly striking. It feels like total projection.
Yeah.
You see the thumbs down, and then you see, well, the ultimate middle finger.
Yes. This visual language really reinforces the author's emotional state, profound disgust, anger, and a wholesale absolute rejection of prevailing societal norms, political structures, and all the compromised individuals operating within them. The string of symbols just summarizes the text's extreme intensity. It's like the author's final nonverbal scream of protest against the fundamental con job of existence.
And the fact that the symbols include things like a beaver and a slice of pizza, right alongside warnings of death and destruction, it only enhances that feeling of profound societal dissonance and chaos.
It suggests that the trivial and the existential are all just inextricably mixed together in this corrupt reality. It's all part of the same big mess.
What a profound and, I have to say, uncompromising journey this text took us on. We began with a critique of a very fundamental personal craving for money and fame, and we escalated that critique into a sweeping rejection of cosmic order, institutional religion, and political integrity. It's an exhausting but intellectually stimulating piece of writing.
The final synthesis of the source's integrated argument is really this. The author posits that the underlying framework of reality itself is a con job created by a flawed demiurge.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation. And because that foundation is deceitful, any human social and political systems built on top of it will inevitably succumb to the low frequencies of craving, particularly the pursuit of money and fame,
which results in the vicious circle.
The inescapable, perpetual, vicious circle of corruption, political hypocrisy, and decay. In this view, the system is designed for failure, and humanity is fundamentally too weak, or maybe just too compelled by status, to resist its built-in incentives.
And yet, despite this absolute fatalism, the author does leave us with a challenging call to action, which we have to relate to you, the learner. The text ends with, "Open your eyes and change my mind." So even in their despair, the author is inviting intellectual engagement. It feels like a last-ditch attempt to be proven wrong about their own cynical axiom.
And that leads us directly to our final provocative thought for you to consider as you digest this profoundly skeptical material. The entire discussion has centered on this belief that money and fame always corrupt, and that the system's toxicity makes any genuine change impossible.